Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural Bodybuilding Mountain. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about something that injures a lot of bodybuilders, but also takes away some of the results from training. Now, in this altruistic, perfectionist sort of age that we're in, a lot of people will be an exercise purist. They learn the exercise goes from point A to point B and then back again. And a lot of times they don't think about the simple premise of muscular tension and how important it is for this to be also present in the exercise. So an example of this that I've seen lots of times in beginners, and I'm sure you guys have as well, where they will perform an exercise, but when they are at the bottom of the movement, they relax to get a little bit of a break or to extend the range of motion, because a relaxed muscle will be able to stretch further than a tensed one. And then they will start to contract the muscle again in order to perform the repetition. And in the case of super light warm-ups and so forth, this isn't really a big deal. But once you start to move into heavier poundages or heavier amounts of weights with more aggressive exercises, exercises that put a lot of stress on a certain area which may be vulnerable to injury, it is definitely imperative that you keep the muscular tension at the bottom of the movement. Right? So if you're leg pressing, you don't want to just relax until your heels touch your butt, or close to, and have the patella tendons taking all that stress on the knee and therefore, popping the tendon in the worst case scenario, or just aggravating or inflaming the area. Another example of this would be bench pressing. A lot of times guys will bench press, but then at the bottom of the movement, in order to touch their chest, they sometimes will relax at the bottom. A lot of times this is confused with the rest pause technique because powerlifters don't relax at the bottom when they touch their chest. They are keeping tension on the muscle in that area to protect the joints and then firing the weight up. The only thing they're doing is pausing at that extended range. So what I want to say to you is that sometimes moving from point A to point B can be effective as long as you're not resting the muscles in some way. And I'm also going to say sometimes in order to make sure that you're maintaining tension, you may want to make sure that you don't do certain ranges of motion in a way that you can rest at the bottom. One example would be if you're squatting, you just sit down at the bottom and just sit on the back of your legs and just rest there for a minute and then come back up and get in the habit of doing that. Because what you're doing is you're resting at the bottom and putting a lot of stress on the tendons, and like I said, with super lightweight, no problem. With heavy weight, it will be a problem. Now, one way that I make sure that I do not relax the muscles at the bottom of the movement is that I don't touch the bottom. I maintain the tension. So you'll see this sometimes when I'm using heavy weight on bench. Sometimes you'll see that I touch the chest, and sometimes you'll see that I don't. Well, the reason why is because I'm just making sure that I keep tension on the chest. And if you're in mid-flight, say you're about that much above your chest, there's no way that you have the opportunity to even relax during that period of time, right? Because if you're relaxing, you just drop the weight. So the whole point is that I'm trying to maintain tension on the chest, make sure that I don't even relax even a little bit. And there is a tendency when you touch the chest to sometimes relax a little bit just to get that little bit of an extra range of motion, then push off and use the elasticity of the rib cage or the diaphragm in order to push that weight off. So I'm trying to avoid that. I want the muscles to do the work, not some sort of momentum chest movement, right? Because you see this with a lot of great bench pressers. Sometimes they'll use that chest to kind of flip that bar up off that last little point anyway. So one could argue they're not necessarily getting more chest development from it. So what I do is I not only maintain tension on the chest by not touching my chest in a lot of cases, not always. And like I said, I don't use this technique all the time, but sometimes I find it necessary. Now, when I'm using certain weight, a lot of times you'll see that I don't touch my chest in order for me to maintain tension, to maintain my groove, and also to make sure that I'm using the efficient range of motion that keeps the least amount of stress on the joints and at the most amount of stress on my pecs. And at the same time, I'm trying to make sure that I don't fall for that urge to relax a little bit and change my entire dynamic of what's going on, right? So not only am I trying to refine my range of motion, but I'm also trying to keep the tension, and I'm also trying to take advantage of the elastic energy in the muscle when it's in a supreme stretched and contracted state at the same time, right? If I rest a little bit to come down that little bit and maybe rest the bar on my chest and stuff, sometimes there's a tendency to even relax just a little bit, maybe not 100%, but just a little bit. And this prevents me from doing that. And then I end up getting a few more reps or maybe one more rep with perfect tension on the muscle. So it's a way of focusing the intensity on that area. Now, I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm just saying that this is one of the reasons why you will see me sometimes touch my chest, sometimes I don't. But I find a very important principle to remember is to not relax at the bottom of a movement, especially when you relax, your body is under tension or that joint is taking a massive amount of stress from the weight that is on it, because you will wear down the joints that way and you will eventually get injured. Something will happen or you'll inflame the area up so badly that you won't be able to train anymore. So yeah, that's really what I wanted to say about that. In the end, you have to experiment, and no rule is absolute in every single situation. But for the most part, when working with moderate weights and higher, you want to make sure that you're not relaxing on the bottom on the body with those weights. Mountain. So I hope this helps you out in your training. Thanks a lot for watching. If you need to get a hold of me, just go to naturalbodybuilding.com, and thanks to the Patreon supporters, and take care for now. Natural.